So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back all the way right back to the beginning of the 90s. I started playing around with capacity on red harvesters out of a necessity. Okay, so we call it a necessity where you have a guy who's got two machines and one of them's pretty good and the other one's not. And I started looking at the differences between those two machines, and the key thing that I found was factory concave placement. So the early 1400s we couldn't move the concave, we were stuck with where it was. So in conjunction with Dean and Phil at Harvest Air, we started making concave adjuster kits for them, and we started moving concaves, and that was the big game changer in those days. So you could get two 1480s, one does 25 tonne an hour and one does 15, and no matter what you do, you can't get that other one any better. And you move the concave and all of a sudden it's way better. So I spent a lot of time with Paul Kelly at Mininu, and he'd never had a harvester because he used the contractor, and he went and bought a little 1640. So this thing had no balls. It was a poor man's poverty pack harvester, and his contractor was at that point in time was running a 1666. I got that little 1640 to out-deliver grain tonnes an hour than that 1666, purely by setup. And in the process of doing that, I stumbled upon two other things. One, they burnt less diesel, and they broke less rotor belts. So when guys would ring me and say, I've got this machine that breaks a rotor belt and loopens every 10 hours, you go, yeah, hang on, I'll come and move the concave and that'll fix that. And you would go and do it, and it would. So let's move on to last harvest. So we had a few odd machines at Bokies that were better than others or not as good, and I found one, we had one customer that bought an 8240, and even though it was set to the factory concave positioning and the factory setting, that machine, when it got to about 33 tonnes an hour, it was good, and as soon as you got to 35, the thing was throwing 500 kilos out the back. And if you tried to push it any harder, it just got worse and worse and worse. Didn't get any better. The industry expert, who was the guy from C&H who came over, he did all sorts of strange things. So he whacked flat separator bars in it like this thing's got, and he just went nuts on it, and all he did was made it worse. Right. So after everyone went away, I went, I'm going to go and see if I can do a 2388 on this. Right. So I shimmed all the rasp bars, set my concave to the factory spec, and then I shifted it right. And then I filled the back section of that machine with spiked rasp bars, and it went out and did 55 tonne an hour. So, and at that 55 tonne an hour it was 1.2% loss. And we thought that was pretty good. So last year I came down to, because all the dealers had said to me, that doesn't work down here, you know, what you do in the wheat belt doesn't work down here. So last year, John Harding rang me and said, can you come and do your magic on my two 8240s? So I drove down on a nice wet weekend, and we did the three headers, his two 8240s and his 9120. So, same thing, shimmed all the rasp bars, moved concave right, filled the back up with spike bars. So John didn't get enough spike bars, so one of them had 34 in it, which is a full set. The other one had 26. First day of harvest, Wes rings me and says, this one that's only got 26 bars in it, when I get above 50 tonne an hour, it turns into a fire hose. It just hoses grain out the back. I said, what about the other one? He said, oh no, it's great, it's 55 and it's going well. He'd gone from 35 tonne an hour, 5.7% grain loss, and 110 litres of diesel an hour, to 55 tonne an hour, 1.15% grain loss, and 85 litres of diesel an hour. We halved his fuel bill. That's just the be all and end all, cut 70 hours off each machine. So this is what can be done. Right. The other key thing, so while we're talking about harvest weed seed control, is this. If you're not throwing grain out your rotor, you're not throwing weed seed out there either. And if it's coming out of the rotor, it's ending up on the sieve. So then you can deal with it in a way that you want to. Whether that's, you know, narrow windrow burning, or whether it's, you know, congregating your weed seed, putting it in a chaff cart. or run out through a mill. The other thing that's a side benefit, IHSD, 72 kilowatts. You got to run that. That's 25 litres of diesel an hour to run that. If we take that 25 litres of diesel off what it takes to run your rotor, you get to run that for free. Good theory. So, and it's not that hard to do.
So when you say shift the rotor, you're just shifting the pinch point?
I'm shifting the pinch point.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening, I did draw a quick drawing on the ground here for Pete this morning. So the factory setting for the rotor, and remembering that what Case are doing is they're building a machine for a global market. Okay? Don't do this if you're going to grow corn or sunflowers. Okay? If you're going to do this and grow corn and sunflowers, it's going to shake your head to bits because of the way that the concave is going to work in relation to the rotor. Okay? Case have made it adjustable for the purpose of being able to optimise that setting and the loading on your sieve. Right? Because the rotor spins, if you stand behind it, spins clockwise, it's going to throw all the material to the left. If you move your pinch point or you move your thrashing point up on the left hand side, which is what ends up happening, you're going to carry some of that grain over to the right and your sieve loading evens up. Okay? The other thing is they have a single or double bar pinch point at the bottom of them with their standard setting. So you're doing all your thrashing on this little space at the bottom. When you move that concave to the right, you increase the surface area that you're thrashing on. And if you check it, you'll find 6 to 8 bars come into contact with the rotor at the same time. So your thrashing surface area becomes this much, not this much. Right? Which means you actually end up running it looser than what you did before. And that's what's happening. It's like driving the handbrake on or letting the handbrake off. So, don't need to chip your header to get more capacity out of it. Don't need to remap it. With these, if you chip or remap, it voids your warranty. Same with the New Holland. Don't have to do it because you can do it in there.